Remember this? It was last July when the Shuttle Atlantis docked with Russia's Mir space station. It's happening again. Atlantis is on the pad, poised for the second Mir docking mission. The astronaut crew has been training for months, flying a simulator with pictures of the space station projected on the wall. The toughest part of the mission will be the docking, which will make a permanent change to the Russian space station, attaching a docking tunnel to the Mir. The shuttle crew knows what it's doing now will help build the International Space Station later.
The purpose for our flight is to practice space station operations, to learn from the Russians, who are the experts in long-duration space flight and have the only permanently manned space station at this time, to learn how what we might incorporate into our International Space Station. The rendezvous techniques, the docking techniques, some of the hardware that we're using now will be identical to what gets used to International Space Station for the life of that program, probably 20, 30, 40 years from now.
The shuttle will carry drinking water, food, clothing, experiments, and even some mail to the three-person crew aboard the space station. On the 7th day of the 8-day mission, the shuttle and Mir will disconnect, and the astronaut crew will prepare to come back to Earth. The 5 astronauts have trained for everything, including a bailout. They've prepared to conduct a spacewalk by training in a water tank. Their mission is scheduled to last for 8 days, and they're hopeful this mission will not be delayed the way Columbia was about a month ago. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Finally, and by a thread, 3 U.S. astronauts training in Russia for extended stays aboard the Russian space station Mir have met size requirements. In the last month, 2 NASA astronauts have been disqualified from training. One was too tall, the other too short. The Russians have certain requirements for Soyuz spacecraft: a height of 1.57 to 1.8 meters, weight less than 84 kilos, and chest widths between 96 and 112 centimeters. And while we're on the subject of U.S.-Russian cooperation in space, we have this program note. CNN International will bring you the launch of the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis. That's a size large, I believe, which is now scheduled for Saturday at 12:58 GMT. Atlantis is to dock with Mir on Tuesday.
The U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis is poised for liftoff in a few hours, and those are live pictures you're seeing of the crew getting ready. NASA says it is cautiously optimistic that clouds will clear in time for Atlantis to get off the ground. Space Shuttle Atlantis is poised for liftoff in a few hours, weather permitting. The crew is on board waiting to see if clouds will clear in time for Atlantis to get off the ground. The launch now scheduled for 12:56 GMT.
Nach einem Kurzschluss und ungünstigen Wetterbedingungen wurde der Start verschoben. Die 5 Besatzungsmitglieder hatten bereits im Cockpit auf den Countdown gewartet und mit der russischen Station Funkkontakt aufgenommen. Kurz vor dem Abheben jedoch brach das Kontrollzentrum in Atlanta den Start ab. Atlantis soll morgen einen neuen Versuch unternehmen, um die 4 russischen Kosmonauten und den deutschen Kollegen Thomas Reiter im All zu treffen.
Den Atlantis-Astronauten aus den USA und Kanada steht Präzisionsarbeit bevor. Ein 4,7 Meter langes Andockmodul aus Aluminium wird an der alternden Mir festgemacht. Dieses gibt dem Shuttle mehr Spielraum bei der Annäherung und erleichtert somit die nächsten Atlantis-Besuche bei Mir. Die Rendezvous im All dienen dem Aufbau der internationalen Weltraumstation Alpha, die im Jahre 2002 in Betrieb gehen soll. Atlantis bringt außerdem Wasser, Versorgungsgüter und Ausrüstung zur Mir, die nun schon 10 Jahre lang im All ist.
A significant storm system across eastern Canada, northeastern U.S. Very windy conditions are expected to continue, along with cold air, which will continue to move into much of the eastern half of the U.S. Rain will be changing to snow, and snow will extend also through much of eastern sections of Canada. Rather active weather in the western U.S. and western Canada as well.
Auch wenn es nicht so aussieht, schlechtes Wetter hat den Start der amerikanischen Raumfähre Atlantis verhindert. Während im amerikanischen Cape Canaveral die Sonne schien, herrschten an den 3 möglichen Notlandeplätzen in Spanien und Marokko Wolken und Regen. Die 5 Atlantis-Astronauten sollen jetzt am Sonntag einen neuen Versuch wagen, zur russischen Raumstation Mir zu starten.
Check the weather forecasts around the globe. First, for Sunday evening across Europe, it looks like the front will be moving its way to the east. From the Benelux region down into the western Mediterranean, still rainy conditions, some windy conditions as well, especially close to the occluded part of the storm system in the low. Back across the British Isles, Ireland, more rain showers, windy conditions, and then to the east, a little bit clearer as you go farther north. And the United States, variety here. The east coast begins to clear, but cool weather. Middle western United States, more rain. North and west, rain and snow up into the western provinces of Canada.
Over the years, the folks at NASA have released a series of fascinating images of other planets in the solar system. Now the same technology is helping us understand our own planet a little better. Check out this view of East Central California, starting in the Lake Tahoe area. The image was generated by the Spaceborne Imaging Radar, which flew on 2 shuttle missions last year. At a conference this week, scientists involved in the program marveled at the cool images and the interesting results, like the discovery of riverbeds under the Sahara Desert, lost ancient cities, and new insights into the continental drift theory. An unheated sensor apparently caused the crash of a $230 million NASA aircraft last January in California. According to an accident report released this week, the highly maneuverable X-31 plowed into the desert at Edwards Air Force Base after ice blocked an intake tube, which senses an airplane's airspeed. As a result, the onboard computer configured the plane for low-speed flight, hurtling the X-31 out of control. The German pilot ejected safely. Accident investigators say a paperwork snafu led to the unheated probe being installed instead of a heated one appropriate for the mission.
You're looking at live pictures of the Shuttle Atlantis crew as they prepare to board the shuttle, preparing to try again in a few hours. The launch was postponed Saturday because of rain and wind at emergency landing sites in Spain and Morocco. Forecasters expect only slightly better weather on Sunday. CNN will provide live coverage of the launch scheduled for 12:30 GMT. And the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis may not get off the ground, but in this case, the weather, not Washington, is the culprit. A budget stalemate between the U.S. Congress and the White House could lead to a shutdown of many government offices and services. And the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis is set to blast off for a rendezvous in space, weather permitting, of course. Ready to try again this hour, but bad weather across the Atlantic threatens to delay liftoff for a second straight day. The launch was postponed Saturday because of rain and wind at emergency landing sites in Spain and Morocco. CNN plans live coverage of the launch scheduled for 12:30 GMT. That's in about 25 minutes from now. 2 polar bears who were raised in a U.S. zoo are heading for a new home. Klondike and Snow are moving from their Colorado home to SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida. As Ed Filmer reports, for at least one young man, it was a tearful farewell.
I'm just cold and I would like some hot chocolate.
He's 4 years old and he's been waiting an hour to see Klondike and Snow.
Tomorrow I'm not going to get to see him.
Mario Sinelli came to say goodbye.
Before they leave.
To a 4-year-old, it looked like the line went on forever.
I'm getting tired of waiting because I want to see Klondike.
Mario waited as patiently as he could,
Ring around the rosy.
inventing new ways to pass the time.
I want some hot chocolate.
Mario's been to see the bears before, and he understands why they have to leave.
Because this home's too small, and for all the polar bears, they can't live here. Come on, let's go, let's go.
Finally, Mario and his mom and dad made it.
Let's go, come on.
The boredom of standing in line gave way to excitement.
Mom, how do I get through? Come on, let's go, let's go. Let's see them, come on.
It was a day of mixed emotions for everyone.
Let me see. Yeah. Mom, look at them, they're so cute. Let's watch him.
He was happy to see the bears,
Look at him. He's so cute.
but Mario says he'll miss Klondike and Snow.
I hope you like your new home. Bye, Klondike. Snow. Bye.
For Mario Sinelli, it was a sad goodbye at first.
She's swimming.
But then the last visit turned happy and exciting.
Hi. I hope you like your new home. Bye.
Oh, she's waving to you. Look at it. Sure, look at it.
Did you see? She's waving.
Say goodbye.
Bye. Whoa. Mommy. Mom, did you see that? Now can we get some hot chocolate? Yes.
4-year-old Mario Sinelli saying goodbye to Klondike at Snow at the Denver Zoo. Ed Fulmer, 9 News.
That's World News for now. I'm Veronica Pedrosa. I'll be back in a moment with live coverage of the countdown for the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis, and you're looking at live pictures of the launch pad as it prepares for that.
Celebrating a decade of achievement. This is CNN International.
The following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
The crew of the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis is on the launch pad, strapped in and ready to try again. But bad weather across the Atlantic threatens to delay liftoff for a second straight day, although for now it is on schedule. The launch was postponed Saturday because of rain and wind at emergency landing sites in Spain and Morocco. You're watching pictures, live pictures now, of the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center in
10,
Florida.
9, 8, 7, go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with the Russian docking module, the threshold to world cooperation in space.
Roll program. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
On Atlantis are now throttling back to 2/3 throttle to allow the spacecraft to pass through the area of maximum air pressure. Atlantis already traveling 700 miles per hour, altitude 4 nautical miles, downrange from the launch pad 2 nautical miles.
A successful launch of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which is due to dock with the Russian Mir space station on Wednesday. The launch was delayed for 1 day, as I said earlier, because of bad weather. Now with the successful
Atlantis,
launch,
go at throttle up.
Atlantis has a 7-minute window
Roger, go at throttle up.
to get up to Mir.
Atlantis 3 main engines are now back at full throttle. Atlantis altitude 12 miles, 9 miles downrange from the launch pad. Atlantis is now traveling 2,400 miles per hour. 1 minute 40 seconds since launch, Atlantis has already burned more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant and weighs less than half of what it did at liftoff. Flight controllers are now standing by for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rocket booster first stage. Booster officer confirms a good separation of the twin solid rockets. Atlantis altitude now 29 nautical miles, 35 miles northeast of the launch pad.
Atlantis, 2-engine TOW, performance nominal.
Atlantis speed now 3,400 miles per hour. That call indicating that the performance of the solid rockets was just as planned. Also, Atlantis can now perform an emergency transatlantic landing on only 2 engines if needed. All systems on board the spacecraft continue in good shape, but 3 engines continuing to burn at full throttle.
You've been watching live coverage of the launch of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which is due for a docking mission with the Russian space station Mir.
Atlantis ist heute mit 5 Astronauten an Bord in Cape Canaveral in Florida gestartet. Sie soll zum zweiten Mal innerhalb von 4 Monaten an die russische Raumstation Mir andocken. Das Manöver ist für Mittwoch geplant. In der Mir befinden sich derzeit 2 Russen und der Deutsche Thomas Reiter.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with the Russian docking module, the threshold to world cooperation in space.
And after a one-day delay, the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis is up, up, and away. Five astronauts aboard Atlantis blast off for a rendezvous with the orbiting space station Mir. CNN's John Holliman will tell us more about it. The Space Shuttle Atlantis was launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida a few hours ago. Atlantis astronauts hope to dock with the Russian space station Mir on Wednesday. The first planned liftoff was scrubbed by bad weather Saturday, but Sunday's launch was trouble-free. And joining us now with details is CNN's John Holliman. John, what can you tell us?
I can tell you, Relitza, that this is such an international mission. I mean, a lot of U.S. space launches say they are accomplishing international goals because they fly around the world. This one is different because on board the space shuttle there is a Canadian astronaut. On board the Mir, in addition to 2 Russians, there is a German European Space Agency cosmonaut. And so it is, the whole world is not only watching but participating in this one. When Atlantis lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, it took a giant step toward international cooperation in space.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with the Russian docking module, the threshold to world cooperation in space.
That's such an exciting thing to watch leave the Earth. In addition to the involvement by the U.S. and Russian astronauts and cosmonauts, as we said, Canadian aboard the shuttle, who will have a major role to play in the most touchy part of this mission, the docking of the 2 spaceships. And there's a European Space Agency cosmonaut aboard Mir who will be helping in the docking from the space station's point of view. NASA's Shuttle Program Director, Lauren Shriver, has just told a news conference why this mission is important to the effort to build the International Space Station with participation from Europeans, Canadians, Russians, Americans, and Japanese.
The docking module that we're taking up today forms more of a permanent docking place for U.S. space shuttles to use in the rest of our missions coming to Mir. It gives us kind of a permanent home, if you will, whenever we're there, so that they don't have to keep changing configuration to allow us to come up, and we can plan a lot better on what attitudes are going to be appropriate, plan our approaches and rendezvous and things a lot better.
Canada's Minister of Industry says this is important to Canada for several reasons.
This flight really, this is the first one since we introduced our current long-term plan for our participation in the space program. The government, which was elected at the end of 1993, established that plan in June of last year, 1994. It includes a commitment to participation with our partners in space station, and it included the participation of our astronauts, of course, in the building of the station. So this, with Chris being our first mission specialist aboard a flight, this, I think, signals the active role that Canada is intent upon playing in station.
Right now, the astronauts are setting up housekeeping more than 160 miles above the Earth. The Mir is orbiting about 213 miles from the Earth's surface right now. So over the next couple of days, the 2 ships will have to get much closer together than they are right now. The astronauts are firing the Atlantis engines to raise their orbit to that of the Mir, and this process will take several days. Here's how the docking will look, and here's what will be happening inside the shuttle and outside in the cargo bay. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield will use the Canadian robot arm to lift the Russian-built 4.7-meter-long docking tunnel from the shuttle's payload bay and set it in place above a docking ring built by the Russians. He'll lock those 2 pieces of hardware in place, and then Atlantis will approach Mir very carefully. The 10-year-old Russian space station has been described by one reporter as looking like a porcupine up there with lots of attachments sticking out from its core module. The shuttle has to avoid touching or damaging any of these solar panels, antenna, or other equipment as it gets closer. Inside Mir, 3 cosmonauts, the 2 Russians and the German, will be talking constantly to the astronauts at their ground controllers in Kaliningrad as well to make sure the speed and angle of approach of these 2 ships as they come together like this will be very precise. The docking scheduled, by the way, for November the 15th at 06:27 GMT, and we will be here talking about it for sure. Once the docking is finished and pressure tests are passed, the 2 crews will get to spend 3 days together, breaking bread, doing some of the traditions for Russians and Americans when they meet together anytime, performing a lot of science experiments. At the end of next week, the astronauts will undock and guide the shuttle back from the Mir. Then the astronauts will come back to Earth a week from tomorrow.
Thank you, John. We have lots more to talk about, but we have to wrap it up here. We're out of time.
3, 2, 1.
Countdown für die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis. Mit einem Tag Verspätung ist sie in Cape Canaveral gestartet. Das Shuttle soll 4 Monate nach seinem letzten Besuch erneut mit der Raumstation Mir zusammentreffen und ein Andock-Modul montieren. Künftige Besucher bei Mir sollen damit problemloser werden. Atlantis bringt zudem Nachschub für die Raumstation, in der auch der deutsche Thomas Reiter arbeitet.
Start in den Weltraum mit einem Tag Verspätung. Um 13:30 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit hob die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis vom Kennedy-Raumfahrtzentrum in Florida ab. Am Mittwoch soll Atlantis an der russischen Raumstation Mir andocken.
The Shuttle Atlantis is in hot pursuit of the Russian space station Mir. The 2 are scheduled to hook up on Wednesday for the second of 7 planned Shuttle Mir dockings. The Atlantis crew is busy preparing for the main event, extending the shuttle's robot arm and running it through some practice maneuvers. Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield did a timeout, though. He took some time to talk with reporters in Canada about his first trip in space.
Some of the images, even so far, fleeting images of seeing the Sahara in a minute and a half, or saw Mount Everest today, and seeing the whole planet as one globe in 90 minutes is just an amazing, humbling thing to see, and that probably strikes home as much as anything.
Before docking, the Atlantis crew is to try to build and install a new docking tunnel on Mir to make future encounters safer and easier. 2 of the astronauts are prepared for an emergency spacewalk if needed to fit the pieces into place. We'll let you know how they do. From the CNN Center in Atlanta, I'm Jonathan Mann. The news continues on CNN International in just a moment.
Crews of Atlantis and Mir will practice in orbit construction for building the planned International Space Station. Meanwhile, with the U.S. government still threatened with shutdown by a budget controversy, is the Atlantis crew worried about getting stuck in space? Earlier in the day, CNN's John Holliman asked the shuttle commander about that.
No, we're not worried. We know that we have a very dedicated team at NASA supporting this mission, both within the government and also with the many contractors that support the space shuttle. We realize that there's a lot going on in the financial world and in the upper echelons of government, but the NASA family will look out after each other, and we know that Mission Control and the many folks at NASA are taking care of us.
For pilot Jim Halsall, what's been the biggest surprise of this flight for you so far?
Well, compared to my first flight, we're flying at a slightly higher altitude. I can see a lot more of the Earth every time I look out the window. And the sun angles just happen to be lower, so we get a lot of perspective, a lot of shadows that bring out a lot of relief of the Earth. So flying over the Andes or over the Himalayas or over the Alps is just a spectacular experience, and it's something I'll not soon forget.
Yeah, Chris Hadfield is a Canadian member of the crew. Chris, how did the docking this morning go from your perspective as you put the tunnel where you're standing or floating right now onto the shuttle's airlock? And when you're done, please pass the microphone over to Commander Cameron for the same question for him as far as how the connection of these 2 pieces went.
John, it went perfectly. I had the chance to use the Canadarm, the robot arm built by Canada that's put on the shuttle today,
and it worked exactly like it had in the best of our training simulators in Houston. I picked it up out of the back of the bay and brought it forward and then positioned it exactly where I wanted it to be using the onboard systems and the space vision system and the digitals that come out of the arm. And then when we assembled it, the mechanism, which was built in Russia, just worked exactly like everybody said, so it was letter perfect.
Yeah, Commander, from your perspective, you had to sort of drive the shuttle into this docking tunnel, didn't you?
Yes, that was what we used to make the actual energy of contact, was the thruster firing from the orbiter. And this was something that we had given considerable thought to about what would be the required amount of energy, how would the mechanism work, what kind of tolerances had to be present within the contact surfaces. And it had been worked out very thoroughly both in Houston and in Moscow, since this is the first time that we'd ever joined Russian and American hardware in quite this way.
Yeah, another question for you, Commander. Do you have any concerns as you get ready to take a 6-hour nap, I won't call it a full night's sleep, and then get ready for tomorrow's docking with the Mir itself? Everything working pretty well?
Well, we've had a series of busy days. If we can finish up all of our objectives today, we'll probably try and wind down a little early, and then everyone will be looking for a good night's sleep because, as you said, we have a very busy day tomorrow.
One more question for Chris Hadfield, if I can, Chris. You got to experience a shuttle launch for the first time 2 days ago. Describe it to us.
It is spectacular. From about 5 minutes in, when we knew for sure that we were going to have the weather to go, the smile on my face just got bigger and bigger, and I was just beaming through the whole launch. I mean, it is just an amazing ride. I've had a chance to fly a lot of different airplanes, but there's nothing like the shuttle ride.
Right, and if we've got time, one last quick question for Jim Halsell. Is what you're doing really worth it? Does the world really need a second space station in orbit right now?
You better believe it, John. What we're doing is setting the groundwork for a series of experimental laboratories that are just going to mean a lot for mankind. The science that we're going to be able to bring home when we're able to continuous scientific research on orbit, it's going to bring back a lot of payback to the people on Earth, and that's what we're trying to achieve, is improve the lives of the people on Earth.
And that concludes our focus segment this hour.
Installation of the 4-ton cylinder was a major assignment for the crew, and 2 astronauts stood by for an emergency spacewalk in case of any problems. Atlantis is to hook up with the Russian space station Mir on Wednesday. It is the second rendezvous for Russian and American spacecraft in just the past 4 months. When the shuttle returns to Earth 3 days later, the tunnel will remain attached to the Mir.
Soll heute an die russische Raumstation Mir andocken. Das Manöver wird nach Angaben der NASA um 7:30 unserer Zeit erfolgen. Das Rendezvous mit der Mir wird der Höhepunkt der 8-tägigen Atlantis-Mission sein. Atlantis und Mir sollen 4 Tage aneinander gekoppelt durchs All fliegen. 8 Astronauten aus 4 Nationen werden dann an Bord sein. Unter ihnen ist auch der Deutsche Thomas Reiter.
Werden sich an Bord so viele Nationalitäten wie noch nie zuvor aufhalten. Neben Amerikanern und Russen ein Kanadier und der Deutsche Thomas Reiter.
Nur noch wenige Kilometer ist Atlantis jetzt von der russischen Station entfernt. Wichtigste Aufgabe der Astronauten vor dem Rendezvous war die Montage eines Spezialtunnels am Raumschiff. Dieses Bauteil wird das Andockmanöver an die Mir wesentlich erleichtern. 4 Tage lang wird Atlantis mit der Station verbunden bleiben. Während dieser Zeit führen die Besatzung gemeinsame Experimente durch. An Bord der Mir ist auch der deutsche Astronaut Thomas Reiter.
Orbital ballet is happening 390 kilometers above the Earth at a speed of more than 27,000 kilometers per hour. Shuttle Commander Ken Cameron talked with CNN earlier about the docking activities.
Right now, we're all inside the Russian docking module, which has been attached to the payload bay docking adapter or orbiter docking system, which is really a tunnel that extends out into the payload bay from the crew module. Right, we are looking right towards you when you have the point of view of the Russians who will be coming through that hatch after the docking. Now, tomorrow we will continue the rendezvous process, which actually started from launch. We had a very small launch window of 5 minutes, and we've been doing a variety of burns or jet firings to get closer and closer to Mir. Tomorrow we'll do the final phase of that, which includes the actual docking. Jim Halsell and I will be in the commander and pilot seats. Jerry Ross, Chris Hadfield and Bill MacArthur will be operating various navigation and rendezvous aids, including the cameras, laser sensors, the radar, and all the equipment on the orbiter that helps us guide ourselves towards Mir.
Officials say this docking maneuver will be much more difficult than the first docking last June. That's because the Russian docking tunnel blocks the direct view of the shuttle's crew. CNN will bring you live pictures of the space docking later in this newscast at about 6:28 GMT. Back here on Earth, it's
Shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir now less than 30 feet apart. They've been chasing each other 245 miles above the Earth for 3 days. And as we say, the two ships are in the final stages of the docking. We don't have live pictures to show you right now, but in the past 20 minutes, we have been able to see pictures, first of the Russian space station Mir, as it appeared to the shuttle astronauts about 170 feet away, or about 40 meters apart from the shuttle. And we also have a picture which came in just a few moments ago of the space shuttle as seen from the Russian space station Mir. The camera in the Mir is a black and white camera, and as you can see, the picture is somewhat grainy. In the center of your screen, you can see the top of the docking adapter tunnel, which is going to be attached to the Russian space station by the space shuttle astronauts in a matter of just a couple of minutes from right now. The docking's scheduled to get underway and actually be completed within the next 3 minutes. And we've got these pictures from Mir. We have other pictures from the space shuttle. It may be possible, I'm not sure that it's possible, that we can listen to NASA's live commentary as we look at these pictures of the space station and the space shuttle that were recorded earlier. If we can do that, we can hear the NASA commentary in the final seconds of this docking maneuver. The docking is taking place over Russia at this point, so that Russian ground stations can participate in getting good data from the Russian space station as it flies overhead. If you look very carefully at this picture, you'll be able to see, or you could see just a moment ago, the Earth beneath. Let's listen now to the docking.
Atlantis is now 8 feet from the space station, closing at a rate of 0.07 feet per second.
Рабочий режим. ГСУ-1. Режим СЭП.
Every time you see a yellow ball on the left side of your screen, it is an engine firing occurring on board the Shuttle Atlantis. And those engine firings are very, very minute because they don't want the ship to move more than, as the NASA commentator Kyle Herring just said, a second or a foot or two or a meter or two every few seconds as the two ships approach. Now they're about 2 meters apart. The picture in the lower right of your screen, or the graphic animation there, is the docking adapter tunnel on board the shuttle, as it would appear to cosmonauts aboard the Mir. This is Mission Control in Houston. The man in the purple shirt seated at the console is Story Musgrave, NASA's oldest astronaut, who was instrumental in repairing the Hubble Space Telescope more than a year ago. And standing up in the white shirt to his left is Sergei Krikalev.
1 minute from docking.
Krikalev is a Russian cosmonaut who has flown aboard the shuttle and who has been seen here on CNN and CNN International several times in the past. We're less than a minute away now, according to NASA's commentator, and we'll go ahead and listen to hear what happens in the final seconds of this docking.
Два фута, ребят.
Так, есть касание, есть индикаторный режим, есть вебкам.
Contact capture.
Capture confirmed.
The docking adapter has been attached to the Mir space station. That's the capture aspect of this. I believe this may be live picture now, coming from the space shuttle. You can hear the...
Capture is confirmed. Atlantis is now docked with the Russian space station.
The picture on the left is of the docking adapter on board the space shuttle, and the picture on the right is the Mir space station.
Bring the ring adapter down.
What has just happened is that the commander of the Mir space station has turned off all the automatic systems that would keep the space station stable in space. The reason for that is what you're about to see on the left side of your screen, the thing on the lower right of the left half of the picture, if you keep up with me, is the part on the shuttle. The Mir is the part on the upper left. The space shuttle will be forcibly driven into the Mir to get those springs that you see there to retract. That'll make the actual docking firm and hard, and that will be occurring within a minute or two. But according to all the controllers on the ground in Russia and in the United States, the docking has been completed successfully. I'm John Holloman, CNN. That concludes our live coverage of the docking of the Mir and the space shuttle.
And we like the capture confirmed part, don't we?
Absolutely. Isn't that nice?
Good job. Thank you, John.
All right. Well, I won't take much credit for this, Cindy.
And that is World News for now. Thanks for joining us. We will be back with more news in a half hour.
Des Atlantis-Raumschiffes die Solarflächen von Mir beschädigt. Um das zu verhindern, hat man jetzt ein 4 Meter langes Rohr dazwischen. Und das hat man gestern auf dem Rumpf der Raumfähre montiert. Und heute nun mit diesem langen Rohr bewegt man sich an die Mir-Station und man wird koppeln. Ich denke mir, in diesem Augenblick müsste die Kopplung erfolgt sein. Wir werden mal sehen, ob wir noch mal ein Bild kriegen.
Alle warten auch gespannt. Ja. Niemand springt von seinem Stuhl auf und freut sich.
Das ist immer so. Die Techniker, die sind da, also jeder hat da seine spezielle Aufgabe am Tisch. Und ja, es bewegt sich immer noch zusammen, die beiden. Es ist natürlich sehr, sehr langsam und eigentlich nicht so richtig fernsehgerecht. Ne? Es knallt und pufft nichts und man sieht nichts zusammenknallen, aber das ist schon alles so okay. Das muss auch so sein. Ne? Vielleicht, was dann passieren soll, 3 Tage sollen beide Raumschiffe miteinander gekoppelt sein. Und diesen 3 Tagen können dann alle 8 Raumfahrer sich frei in diesem ganzen großen Komplex bewegen.
Wie groß ist der Komplex ungefähr?
Naja, sag ich mal, so etwa vielleicht 15 Meter und dann im Quadrat. Ja. Über das Gewicht hatte ich schon gesagt, über 200 Tonnen. An Bord der Raumfähre befinden sich wichtige Versorgungsgüter für die Raumstation. Das Allerwichtigste ist immer Wasser. Dann befinden sich auch technische Ausrüstung, zum Beispiel auch neue Solarflächen für die Raumstation Mir. Und dann auch wieder Lebensmittel. Also ich habe gelesen, Steak soll dabei sein, Gemüse, Blumen soll dabei sein. Ja, Blumen ist auch. Also man denkt auch, ja, das ist nicht bloß für wissenschaftliche Zwecke, sondern auch ein bisschen. Man muss sich so vorstellen, die Astronauten da oben, es ist natürlich auch eine hohe psychische Belastung dort oben, nicht nur eine physische. Die gegenwärtige Mir-Besatzung ist jetzt seit 2 Monaten alleine im All, in diesem relativ geschlossenen Raum, wo das Leben also nur von Maschinen abhängt.
Also um es ein bisschen heimelig zu machen. Dort.
Ja, um es ein bisschen heimlich zu machen. Und sie freuen sich sicherlich, wenn jetzt 5 Mann zu Besuch kommen. Das sind dann wieder irdische Wesen, mit denen man sich unterhalten kann. Ja. Insgesamt ist ja geplant, dass die Mir-Besatzung, also die 2 Kosmonauten und der deutsche Astronaut noch bis Ende Februar dort oben sind. Es sind jetzt 2 Monate oben, sie haben noch 3,5, fast 4 Monate noch da oben zu arbeiten. Zeit, ne? Das ist eine enorm lange Zeit. Es sind eine Reihe von wissenschaftlichen Versuchen, die durchgeführt werden. Also es sind immer ein ganzes Spektrum, das sich immer so zusammenfassen lässt auf medizinischem Gebiet, auf astrophysikalischem Gebiet und Erdbeobachtung. Das sind so die 3 großen Komplexe, die ich nennen möchte. Und Materialforschung auch. Und wenn der Shuttle dann abkoppeln wird, ich denke so in der Nacht zum Samstag, wenn alles planmäßig erfolgen wird, dann wird es in der Nacht zum Samstag sein. Jetzt sind sie zusammengekoppelt.
Schade, dass man das jetzt nicht so genau sehen kann, so die Schnittstelle.
Ja, weil es einfach zu langsam geht.
Ja.
Aber wir sehen jetzt diesen riesen Komplex, ja.
Kannst du mal genau sagen, wo es ist schwierig, also, da jetzt eine Streckenbeschreibung
also der obere Teil jetzt hier oben, das ist die
da, wo der schwarze Ring ist, etwa...
Das ist der Kopplungspunkt. Das ist der Kopplungspunkt. Und jetzt erkenne ich das auch richtig deutlich. Also ich denke, ich habe das zuerst sogar verkehrt gesagt. Unten das Braune, das ist dieses neue Modul. dieses 4 Meter lange, was man eben zum Schützen der Solarflächen, die man rechts und links sieht, jetzt verwendet, damit Atlantis nicht mehr so dicht ran muss. Ja. So, und darunter ist eben die Raumfähre.
Ja,
und links sieht man noch so einen Arm, das ist auch von der Raumfähre, links der Arm.
Ja.
Gut, ja, wir müssen leider zum Ende kommen.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Ricardo,
dass
du zu uns ins Studio gekommen bist. Ja, alles klar, danke.
Raumstation Mir angedockt. An Bord der Atlantis sind 5 Astronauten, an Bord der Mir 2 Russen und der Deutsche Thomas Reiter. Beide Weltraumgefährte sollen 4 Tage miteinander verbunden bleiben. Die Atlantis war am Sonntag mit eintägiger Verspätung von Cape Canaveral in Florida gestartet.
Genau 7:27 Uhr unserer Zeit an die russische Raumstation Mir angekoppelt. Das Andockmanöver ging reibungslos vonstatten. Zum ersten Mal benutzten die Astronauten einen speziell entwickelten Zwischentunnel, um die Luken der Station und des Shuttles miteinander zu verbinden. Mir und Atlantis sollen 4 Tage gekoppelt bleiben. Auf dem gemeinsamen Programm stehen wissenschaftliche Experimente. An Bord der Mir befindet sich auch der deutsche Astronaut Thomas Reiter.
Space Shuttle Atlantis docked with the Russian space station Mir, and the historic meeting took place. CNN's John Holloman joins us now with the details. John?
Cindy, it was a big sigh of relief across the Atlantic between Russia and the United States a few minutes ago as the docking was finally completed. The process went into its final phase when the shuttle astronauts parked their spaceship 170 feet below Mir. The Russian space station's blinking lights marked the docking port, which was the target for Shuttle Commander Ken Cameron. A few minutes later, the camera aboard Mir was able to see the shuttle from about 30 feet away. Officials in NASA's Mission Control and its equivalent space center in Russia were on the edge of their seats as the 2 vehicles completed the complex ballet of docking. And cameras on both ships were used to guide Atlantis into its final docked position. As the 2 docking adapters interlocked, the shuttle's engines were fired to complete the mating. Coming up, pressure tests of the docking tunnel. If it's not leaking, and it hasn't leaked so far, the hatch will open in about an hour and a half, and the astronauts and cosmonauts will shake hands and exchange gifts in an arrival ceremony. The shuttle is flying over Australia right now as the tests are continuing. This is a picture of the docking as taken by the astronauts aboard the space shuttle. It's been in a tape recorder aboard the shuttle because of communication difficulties with the ground. And actually, this is a live picture because you can see that orange docking tunnel there at the bottom of your screen as it is attached to the Mir. This is not pre-docking. This is probably right now. You can see the space shuttle's robot arm off to the left, Cindy. And as we've been talking about this over the past several hours, I told you the complexity of this was because of all those solar panels. And you can see them there on the left and the right over behind the docking tunnel. And there's even one radiator that sticks out from the center of your screen up to the upper right-hand corner, which could also have been damaged if the shuttle had gotten any closer to the Russian space station than it did. That is actually a beautiful picture with the sunrise coming up behind all of it. And I'll be back a little bit later. We'll talk more as these events unfold during the next hour or 2.
Okay, thank you, John. The U.S. Shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir docked just about an hour ago. The docking was made harder by the addition of a 4.5-meter docking tunnel, which will be left behind when the crafts separate Saturday. The tunnel will be used later in the next 5 scheduled dockings.
Fast 400 Kilometern über der Erde hat die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis sicher an die russische Raumstation Mir angelegt. Die Besatzungen der beiden Raumfähren wollen 3 Tage lang zusammenarbeiten.
7:27 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit. Der Kommandant der US-Raumfähre Atlantis öffnet die Luke zur Raumstation Mir. Das Weltraumrendezvous ist perfekt. Mit Blumen und Schokolade begrüßen sich die 8 Raumfahrer auf das Herzlichste. Über 2 Stunden hatte das komplizierte Andockmanöver gedauert. In Zentimeterarbeit steuerte der Bordkommandant der Raumfähre Atlantis den Verbindungskanal von Mir an. Ein Ballett konzentrierter Anstrengung, so nannte es einer der Astronauten der US-Fähre. Doch alles verlief nach Plan. 3 Tage lang wollen die Besatzungen nun miteinander verbringen. Doch vor den Forschungsarbeiten steht erst einmal ein Gruppenfoto auf dem Programm.
Die Kopplung der US-Raumfähre Atlantis an die russische Raumstation Mir ist heute früh geglückt. Gut 2 Stunden später konnten sich 4 Amerikaner, 2 Russen, ein Kanadier und der Deutsche Thomas Reiter die Hände schütteln. Die US-Astronauten brachten der Mir-Besatzung Lebensmittel und Wasser mit. Atlantis und Mir, die sich in diesem Jahr schon zum 2. Mal begegnen, sollen 3 Tage lang aneinander gekoppelt bleiben. Für die nächsten 2 Jahre sind 5 weitere Besuche von Raumfähren bei Mir geplant.
Well, they came bearing chocolates, carnations, and a new 15-foot docking tunnel. Perhaps the astronauts should have brought with them some cash. Lack of cash has delayed the cosmonauts' return to Earth, we're told. But as CNN's John Holloman reports, even without money, the 2 crews were very glad to get together.
Smiles all around from the docking tunnel connecting the Space Shuttle Atlantis to Russia's Mir space station. The 2 spaceships are flying together 245 miles above the Earth after the docking, which allowed them to hook up at more than 17,000 miles an hour. The docking process went into its final phase when the shuttle astronauts parked their spaceship 170 feet below Mir. The Russian space station's blinking lights marked the docking port, which was the target for Shuttle Commander Ken Cameron. A few minutes later, the camera aboard Mir was able to see the shuttle from about 30 feet away. Officials in NASA's Mission Control and its equivalent Space Center in Russia were on the edge of their seats as the 2 vehicles completed the complex ballet of docking, and cameras on both ships were used to guide Atlantis into its final docked position.
Capture is confirmed. Atlantis is now docked with the Russian space station.
As the 2 docking adapters interlocked, the shuttle's engines were fired to complete the mating, and you could see the Russian space station vibrate. After a series of leak checks was completed, the hatch between the 2 spaceships was opened, and the 4 Americans and 1 Canadian climbed for the first time onto the Russian spaceship. They greeted the 3 cosmonauts with traditional gifts of chocolate and peach-colored carnations, but also some special presents, including a collapsible guitar from astronaut musician Chris Hadfield to German cosmonaut Thomas Reiter. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Marcia Smith is an aerospace policy specialist with the Congressional Research Service. The CRS is a division of the Library of Congress that provides research and data to members of the U.S. Congress. It does, I suppose, Ms. Smith, when it isn't shut down, as a lot of it is today. But not shut down is the space program, as we just saw in the Holloman report. This was sort of a signal venture, wasn't it? The addition of a permanent module from an American delivery vehicle to an orbiting Russian space station?
Yes, I mean, it certainly is a positive step forward in American and Russian space cooperation, all of which will be leading up eventually to us building a new space station jointly.
Or the cosmonauts and the German that they joined up there are being stranded in space, they say, because of money. They weren't brought back down on time, and they're going to be up there, I think, into February.
Well, they're certainly not stranded in space. They always have a spacecraft up there that can bring them down in an emergency, so cosmonauts have never been stranded up there. They always have a route to get home.
Laura, but economically sort of without gas, as it might be said. What is with the Russian space program as it turns gradually to a capitalist society?
Well, their space program is under severe financial duress. The head of the military space program and the head of the civilian space program testified to their parliament earlier in the year, and they said that the civilian program today is only getting 20% of the money that it got in 1989, and the military program is only getting 10% of the money it got in 1989. So obviously they have some big hurdles to get over. They have some priorities to make. So far their space station program has been a priority, so it continues to operate.
Isn't NASA, the United States Space Agency, paying a considerable amount of money, or somebody, $400 million for the use of it?
Yes, NASA and the Russian Space Agency have an agreement that NASA will pay $400 million over 4 years, so it's $100 million a year. And most of that is going for our use of the Mir space station, and a little bit of it, 65 million of it, is going towards getting ready to build the new space station Alpha.
Right. This money being parsed out that way is sort of a rescue line in some respects, but the Russian space providers are also testing rockets that they would like the United States and private people to buy, aren't they?
The Russians have developed rocket engines, of course, over the whole history of the space program. They were the ones who launched the very first satellite into orbit, as we may recall. And some of those engines hold great interest for Western companies. The RD-120, for example, is a very high-efficiency liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen engine, and our companies are interested in that, possibly in using it in some of our own launch vehicles. So there are things that the Russians have developed that are of interest commercially to Western companies.
What, and you study this, what on balance is the economic state of the program with regard to Alpha, the space station? Is there enough money in the pipeline to do it?
That's one of the big challenges, I think, for the space station program overall. The space station is being built by us, the Russians, the Europeans, the Canadians, and the Japanese all working together. And Russia is in the critical path of that space station. They've agreed to build certain pieces that if they're not there, the space station can't be completed. And so you're taking the risk that Russia is going to hold itself together politically and economically over the lifetime of the space station program when you make a decision to put them in the critical path.
Right, the Russians would like to do some things that really involve Kazakhstan and Baikonur and other places and start a commercial program there, wouldn't they?
Yes, one of the complexities of this is that it's not just Russia that we're working with.
That's the problem.
The launch site that they use for space stations is in Kazakhstan, which of course is its own country, and one of the launch vehicles is built in Ukraine. So Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine all have to work together, and they do have plans afoot to offer commercial launches. This is actually a Ukrainian initiative working with Russia and Norway and an American company, Boeing. They would launch from the ocean, actually, from a launch site built specifically in the ocean. It's on an oil drilling platform. But another option is to launch from this launch site in Kazakhstan. So there is quite a connection amongst those three former Soviet republics.
There's a big monster in a hangar not far from where we're speaking, Energia, the big Soviet rocket that was bigger than the Saturn V, lies there rusting with no mission. Is that a metaphorical lesson for the world somehow?
I'm not sure if it's a lesson for the world, but it is interesting that we built the Saturn V for a specific purpose to send astronauts to the moon. They finally got around to building their version of a Saturn V because they had grandiose plans for building orbital facilities and launching people to Mars. And those plans just haven't reached fruition yet. They're further downstream than this rocket can support. And so just as we abandoned the Saturn V at the end of the Apollo program, they've now abandoned the Energia after only 2 launches.
Was that to launch their version of the shuttle, the Buran?
Yes, and it was used once to launch their Buran. The Buran didn't have anybody aboard it at the time. It was an automated flight, and it was the one and only flight of their space shuttle, and now they're actually breaking up some of their space shuttles because they realize they're not going to be flying those either.
On a human basis, though, this joining together, this cooperation really is a signal to the world of things that can be done, isn't it?
Many people see it that way, symbolically, especially as the end of the Cold War, and now finally these two arch rivals in space can work together cooperatively. There's been a lot of cooperation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the past, but nothing on the scale of what will be happening in the Alpha program.
And with Europe as a partner, and Japan, as you mentioned, too.
And Canada.
The entire world. Well, it's a Canadian working with the Canadian arm that really did all the work in putting the module up there today. So I guess that tells the story of Marcia Smith, too.
Yes, indeed.
Our thanks to Marcia Smith, once the Executive Director of the U.S. National Commission on Space that projected NASA's space goals until the year 2035. Now the Aerospace Policy Specialist with the Congressional Research Service. Knows a lot about the business. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Atlantis has a picture-perfect rendezvous.
This bird flew beautifully. It's been flawless and a real pleasure to be aboard.
And the moment they'd all been waiting for, the human contact. Handshakes, gifts of chocolates, and floating flowers at the ready. But the Atlantis crew have far more to hand over the course of the next few days. There'll be clothing, water, equipment, even a guitar. Then moving slowly into Mir's cramped confines. The combined crews will be together until Saturday. This mission, another step towards building an international space station.
Mitte November 95. Die Euromir-Besatzung bekommt Besuch aus den USA. Ein Astronaut der amerikanischen Raumfähre Atlantis öffnet die Verbindungsluke zur russischen Raumstation und kann als ersten den Kommandanten der Mir, Juri Gizenko, begrüßen.
Pilot Jim Halsell from West Monroe, Louisiana, on his second voyage in space. He flew on STS-75 last year.
Hi, Jerry Ross.
Die fünfköpfige Besatzung der Atlantis wird gemeinsam mit der Euromir-Crew medizinische und Umweltexperimente durchführen. Außerdem wird ein neues Koppelmodul an der Mir-Station angebracht, um künftige Andockmanöver von Raumfähren an die Mir zu erleichtern. Und die Mir-Besatzung wird mit sehnsüchtig erwarteten Versorgungsgütern beliefert, darunter frisches Trinkwasser, Gemüse und Obst sowie Post von zu Hause. Der gemeinsame Weltraumeinsatz soll beispielhaft für eine internationale Zusammenarbeit in der Raumfahrt sein. Gleichsam die Generalprobe für die Forschung auf der Raumstation Alpha, mit deren Bau Ende 1997 begonnen wird. Das Gruppenfoto hat Symbolwert, denn bis auf Japan sind jetzt auf Mir mit den USA, Russland, Kanada und Thomas Reiter für die Europäische Weltraumagentur ESA alle Nationen vertreten, die auch beim Alpha-Projekt mitmachen.
On behalf of NASA and in fact Chris Hadfield as well.
Pilot Jim Halsell from West Monroe, Louisiana, on his second.
Nach 3 Tagen ist das Rendezvous im All beendet. Mit Materialproben und ersten Versuchsergebnissen von der Mir kehrt die Atlantis zur Erde zurück. Bei der Ankunft auf dem Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral in Florida erklärt Kommandant Kenneth Cameron später, man habe 3 Freunde auf der Mir zurückgelassen. Mit zurück auf die Erde nahm die Mannschaft der Atlantis nicht nur erste Ergebnisse von Experimenten auf der Mir, sondern auch neues Filmmaterial, gedreht mit einer professionellen Fernsehkamera, die sich ständig auf der Raumstation befindet. Der Schwebeflug durch die Module der Raumstation mit der Kamera vor dem Körper vermittelt einen guten Eindruck davon, in welcher Enge sich die Kosmonauten auf der Mir bewegen müssen.
Hello.
Vom eng verzweigten Röhrensystem der Mir führt die Reise mit der Kamera weiter in das angedockte Space Shuttle und endet schließlich im Cockpit der Atlantis. Musik gab es jedoch nicht nur von der Konserve, sondern auch live. Entspannt lauschen Thomas Reiter und Kollegen den Songs eines Crewmitglieds der Atlantis.
But I love to see them Dolly Parton's tits. Yeah, I love to see them Dolly Parton's tits. Because they're so big and soft and round and they don't make a sound. How they look remains a mystery. With my hand shoved in my pockets, I'm just thinking about Dolly's rockets. Here I come again, my fantasy. Yeah, there I go again, my fantasy.
The crews exchanged mementos, including sport shirts, a collapsible guitar, and commemorative photographs of the joint mission. And then they ate. The Shuttle-nauts treated their Mir counterparts to a full-course meal, including steak, shrimp cocktail, even ice cream. The crews are to go their separate ways on Saturday, with Atlantis scheduled to return to Earth on Monday.
Die 8 Raumfahrer aus 4 Nationen gaben zum Schluss noch einmal eine gemeinsame Pressekonferenz und lobten ihre Zusammenarbeit. Nach dem Abschied begann die Crew der Raumfähre Atlantis mit den Vorbereitungen für das Abkoppeln von Mir, das am Vormittag stattfinden soll. Die Atlantis soll dann am Montag in Cape Canaveral landen. Die beiden russischen Kosmonauten und der deutsche Thomas Reiter werden dagegen noch weitere 3 Monate auf der Station Mir im All bleiben.
Zeit wird sich die Raumfähre Atlantis wieder von der russischen Station Mir lösen und mit ihr sind auch die 5 Besucherastronauten wieder weg. Steaks, Eis und wissenschaftliche Ausrüstung lassen sie zwar da, doch die 3, die oben bleiben, maulten heute ein bisschen. Zu kurz der Kurzbesuch von der Erde. Und das Maulen hörten viele, es war nämlich internationale Pressekonferenz im All. Ansonsten waren allesamt bestens gelaunt, die Zusammenarbeit war spitze und zum Abschied sang man leise Servus.
Eine außergewöhnliche Gesangsnummer. Mögen diese Tage doch niemals enden, singt der Weltraumchor beim Abschied im All. Und der fällt den 8 Astronauten, wie sie selbst sagen, äußerst schwer. 3 Tage nur dauerte das Treffen an Bord der russischen Raumstation Mir. In 9 Stunden macht sich die amerikanische Raumfähre Atlantis dann auf ihren Rückflug zur Erde. Nur 3 Astronauten bleiben zurück an Bord der Raumstation. Auch Thomas Reiter. Seit September kreist der Frankfurter um die Erde und will eigentlich nicht zurück. Ich habe hier oben jede Menge positive Erfahrungen gesammelt, vor allem bei unseren gemeinsamen Versuchen. Und ich glaube, dies bringt uns der ständigen Raumstation Alpha ein gutes Stück näher. So sieht es aus Sicht des Deutschen aus, wenn er durch die Raumstation Mir schwebt. Für Thomas Reiter Routine. Noch bis Ende Februar soll er im All bleiben. Es war der erste Besuch seit 2 Monaten. Schließlich kommt nicht alle Tage ein Weltraumbus vorbei. Schnell sind die 8 Raumfahrer Freunde geworden und haben sich eines fest versprochen. Auf der Erde wollen sie sich wiedersehen.
Also threw in a little entertainment for the folks back home. Atlantis is scheduled to undock from Mir Saturday.
And it's goodbye, for now at least, as the crew of the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis prepares to undock from the Mir space station. Good things come to an end, even a rendezvous in space. And welcome back, and next we will go into space, and for that we are joined by our expert, CNN's John Holliman. John, we're going to see how the space shuttle Atlantis is going to depart from the space station Mir. What will happen?
It's going to be a very interesting thing, but we have some pictures which we took a few minutes ago of the 2 spaceships joined together. You'll remember 3.5 days ago, the shuttle moved into the Mir with an unusual extension onto the shuttle. You can see it there at the top of your screen, the rust-colored or reddish-looking thing. That's the docking tunnel that connects the shuttle to Mir. The shuttle is down at the bottom of your screen, the white thing. You can see a couple of things that look sort of like dominoes. Those are latches that hold the shuttle to that tunnel. At the other end of that tunnel, the other end of 15 feet, which you couldn't see in that picture, the tunnel is connected to Mir. And what will happen is the connection to Mir will remain while the connection to the shuttle will be broken. Those latches, the domino-looking things, will change position a little bit, and the red tunnel will appear on our screens to slowly move away, when in fact it'll be the shuttle that is moving away, backing away very, very slowly from Mir. What has happened in the past 3 or 4 minutes is that Mir, the control system for the Russian space station, which keeps it steady in space, has been turned off. So Mir is now in what astronauts and cosmonauts call the free drift mode. What that means is there's nothing that the cosmonauts can do to affect its motion. It's just lying there, basically.
Is that very dangerous? Is it difficult?
It's not dangerous at this moment. It would be dangerous if it stayed that way for very long. It turns out that when you have an object like a space station in space and you want it to maintain its position or change its position toward the sun in a controlled way, if you don't constantly fire small puffs of rocket fuel, it's going to get off course. It's going to start to wobble. And for a few minutes' time, they can not fire these engines and let it be in the free drift mode. That way, the shuttle will sort of be in control of the movement of both the spaceships. The shuttle will unlatch, and the latches are sort of like interlocking fingers. The interlocking fingers will slowly begin to pull apart at about well, a few millimeters a second. I mean, a very slow thing. It might be like watching grass grow, and we don't even know if we're going to have pictures, but we'll be able to hear the astronauts and cosmonauts. We have some pictures from a few minutes ago that may be better television. But at any rate, it's supposed to be happening right now. I'll tell you what I'd like to do if we can. Let's listen to NASA's commentator, James Hartsfield. You'll hear Ken Cameron, the shuttle commander, and others.
The orbiter docking system power down is completed. Atlantis is now 25 feet from the space station.
That happened quickly.
Opening at a rate of 0.2 of a foot per second.
Сейчас я посмотрю. Ага. Положение лифт должно быть. Лифт должно быть. Так.
Two ships about 8 meters apart now.
Do they always speak partly English, partly Russian?
The Russians usually speak Russian. The Americans try to speak Russian.
0.35 or 0.3 of a foot per second.
Well, here's our first live picture from space, and it's actually from Mir. The quality of the picture may be a little in and out. The Mir is now flying over ground stations in Russia. That's how we're getting these pictures, and it's just getting to the point.
Views from the space station Mir as Atlantis slowly backs away at a rate of 0.3 of a foot per second. The distance now is 45 feet.
45 feet, when you're talking about two vehicles the size of a 747 and a DC-9, is really not very much. They're still pretty close. It's very likely, I'm almost certain now, that the shuttle is clear of the Mir's solar panels.
10 minutes or so,
and then
the
later
shuttle
on,
should be at a distance
Atlantis
of about
will
250
float
feet.
around Mir. Why are they doing that?
To take some pretty pictures.
Oh, good, for us again.
Yeah, they're trying to help as much as they can. They call it a survey of Mir. The thing is, it's very dangerous to do a spacewalk. It's dangerous to have an astronaut or a cosmonaut outside, and when they go outside, they go out, fix whatever's broken, and get back in a hurry. It's very unusual for you to get the opportunity to have something with good cameras on it to take pictures of everything outside somebody else's spaceship. So the Americans are taking that opportunity, and they'll show these pictures to the Russians, so they'll see if there's, a loose antenna or something that they might not have been able to tell from inside.
66 feet.
I suppose must have been pretty exciting days also for the people on board Mir, the two Russians, the one German, finally getting a visitor out there in space. Tell us a little bit about the crew aboard Mir.
Well, Thomas Rieder, the German, has been very vocal in the past 24 hours. He, the Mir cosmonauts did a news conference, and Rieder speaks very good English, which made him easier for me to see. You can see him there. Let's see, I'll tell you where he is. He's, well, actually, you can't see. Yes, you can. He's on the right in the light blue spacesuit. He and the astronauts and the rest of the cosmonauts in their departure ceremony sang this very unusual Russian song. I think they might have made it up. they're trying to be a musical crew, and I've listened to this song over and over and over again to try to hear some harmony or something, and I don't know.
It's in outer space. They have a good excuse.
That's right, and they certainly have had a good time. Back to our live pictures, Bettina. You can see in the upper part of your screen two triangular-looking things hanging down sort of into the shuttle. Those are two of Mir's solar panels. The big moment of tension in this undocking was, will the shuttle be able to get away from there without hitting those two panels? And it did.
The Russian interface officer is notifying the mission control in Kaliningrad that the orbiter is outside of 50 feet, meaning the Mir crew can go back to attitude control now on the space station.
If you're watching in Europe or Russia, and you go outside right now, you'll be able to see this. You won't be able to see it as clearly as you can on television. But the Mir shuttle combination is flying from west to east across northern Asia right now. It was, if you're in Europe and you look to the east, you'll be able to see it look like a bright star moving very fast. If you're in China, you'll have to look to the west right now, but you'll see it go over.
A couple of minutes. Current altitude
How
of both
long will it
vehicles
take
is
before Atlantis will return home?
Atlantis will be flying by itself for about a day and a half. In Eastern time in the United States, it's coming back at lunchtime, so about 12:30 in the afternoon Eastern time. We can do some quick GMT conversion, I guess 17:30 on Monday GMT, and so we'll be able to watch Atlantis land together.
They are slowing the solar race, and we have a good picture of you from Mir.
That's Story Musgrave. Remember Story from the Hubble Space Telescope, the oldest astronaut, 62 years old now. I think he's bald, and has a very distinctive voice. He's the capsule communicator on this during this shift on the shuttle.
What was the basic mission of Atlantis? Just bringing supplies and pay a visit?
It's the real mission. I mean, there's several. That was certainly the major stated mission, to bring some supplies to the Mir. That's what the Russians wanted them to come for. But additionally, the shuttle was able to do some actual construction in outer space. American astronauts have never tried to do construction before. And the fact that they could get this tunnel, the 15-foot or 4-meter, 5-meter tunnel, out of the shuttle's cargo bay and attach it to Mir had never been tried before by Americans. What they say is that it proved that Americans and Russians are going to be able to work together to actually construct huge chunks of metal and plastic in space, which is good because 2 years from today, there will be a shuttle flight in progress, if the time schedule continues the way it is, for space station construction. And the Russians have some huge unmanned rockets which will ferry big pieces of the space station up into space. The astronauts have the robot arm, which was made by the Canadian government, and they'll be using that to attach other pieces to that. So the long-term outlook for this mission is, yes, they can do something that they knew they were going to have to do.
How much will the International Space Station cost? Are there ballpark figures?
Well, there are. They're bad ones. Originally, they were thinking about $8 billion, and now they're in the $30 billion range. And different countries, the European Space Agency, Japanese, Russia, U.S., will all contribute parts of that. So it won't hurt any one government too much. And there'll be a wonderful place where you and I might be able to go and do some science experiments someday.
Okay, good. We'll stay there. And thank you again, once again, explaining everything what's happening in space to us, CNN's John Holloman, and we'll be back with more in a moment.
The Atlantis
It was an emotional farewell. Astronauts from the U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis and cosmonauts from the Russian space station Mir embraced and sang "Those Were the Days" on Friday before closing the hatches between their linked spaceships. And then it was time to leave. The shuttle separated from the space station just a short while ago. Atlantis is scheduled to return to Earth on Monday. And also in orbit is a European infrared telescope launched by an Ariane rocket. Robin White reports.
With one giant blast, Ariane lit up the night skies over French Guiana. On board a $600 million telescope, which scientists hope might, just might, open up a few more of space's mysteries. What makes it unique is that the telescope can look into cool parts of the universe that usually remain invisible. It does this by picking up infrared light, enabling it to observe stars like brown dwarfs, which are too small to twinkle. It will also be looking into the disks of gas around young stars where planets may be forming, which could provide clues about how the universe was formed. To achieve all this, the telescope must be cooler than the objects it's looking at. Scientists have managed that by surrounding it with helium.
This is the most sensitive infrared observatory ever launched. It's so sensitive it could see the heat from an ice cube at a distance of 100 kilometers.
Back on Earth, we should start receiving the first pictures and data in about 11 weeks. It will be an exciting moment, hopefully providing scientists with a little more knowledge about where we came from.
The telescope was originally scheduled to launch in 1993, but was delayed 2 years due to technical problems.
Typ Ariane wurde heute Nacht in Kourou gestartet und hat einen Forschungssatelliten ins All gebracht. Damit sollen bislang unerforschte Gebiete des Weltraums erreicht werden. Der Satellit ist mit einem speziellen Teleskop versehen, das auf Infrarotwellen reagiert. So können Bilder von bislang unsichtbaren Gaswolken gemacht werden. Die Wissenschaftler erhoffen sich davon neue Erkenntnisse über die Entstehung von Sternen und Planeten. Das Projekt kostet mehr als 1 Milliarde Mark.
Das russisch-amerikanische Weltraumrendezvous ist vorbei. Atlantis ist wieder auf dem Weg nach Hause. Der deutsche Kosmonaut Thomas Reiter bleibt im All. Erst in 3 Monaten wird er die russische Station Mir verlassen.
Das NASA-Kontrollzentrum in Houston, Texas. Hier hat man während der letzten Tage das russisch-amerikanische Treffen überwacht. Hier wird auch die Abkoppelung der beiden Raumstationen kontrolliert. Und sie verläuft problemlos. Um 9:16 Uhr mitteleuropäischer Zeit löst sich die Atlantis von Mir. An Bord hat sie rund eine halbe Tonne wissenschaftliches Material der Russen. Zurück bleibt das 4,5 Tonnen schwere Ankoppelungsmodul, denn für die nächsten 2 Jahre sind 5 weitere Treffen geplant.
Die US-Raumfähre Atlantis hat sich nach 3 Tagen wieder von der russischen Raumstation Mir abgekoppelt. Um 9:16 Uhr trat sie problemlos den Rückweg zur Erde an. Die 5 Astronauten sollen am Montag in Cape Canaveral landen. Der Deutsche Thomas Reiter bleibt mit den 2 russischen Kosmonauten noch bis Februar an Bord der Mir.
Atlantis gracefully undocked from the Russian space station Mir on Saturday after being joined for 3 days in orbit. The shuttle's 5 astronauts transferred food, water, and equipment to the space station's 3 cosmonauts, who will remain aboard Mir until late February. The Atlantis crew also left a 15-foot docking tunnel for future link-ups. The 2 crews bid each other an emotional farewell before closing the hatches between their 2 ships Friday. The joint crews included men from the US, Russia, Canada, and Germany, making them the most internationally diverse group ever on one spaceship. Atlantis is due back on Earth Monday.
3, 2, 1, launch!
For 2 days, kids of all ages are testing their prized possessions in rural Culpeper County, Virginia. They brought everything from small 12-inch, 2-pound miniature rockets to 8-foot monsters with solid rocket boosters, just like NASA uses on the launch pad. Dozens of people came from as far away as New York to show off their handiwork on a chilly weekend.
Should go up real nice. It's got 3 parachutes in it.
There are no payloads, but the return for Dave Weber and his son is usually a big payoff because it's a joint venture from launch to recovery.
Another successful recovery.
It's also an opportunity for little girls to hang out with Dad and a chance for some to show off. And those with the right stuff could blast off into history. Tom Dietz of the Smithsonian's Air and Space Museum came expressly for that purpose.
We're always looking for things that really represent the popular culture of aviation and aerospace, and this kind of activity certainly is a good example of that.
With the Federal Aviation Administration clearing a 15,000-foot flight ceiling, the sky's the limit.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Some of the rockets are in a class by themselves.
My son said, you know, that it was really turning out to be a cheesy-looking rocket. So we thought, well, hey, we'll call it the Cheese Meister.
3, 2, 1.
Everyone from amateur rocket scientists to astronaut wannabes participate in this hobby, which clearly has its ups and its downs, and some people lose a lot of money. But when it's all said and done, they're all really here for the experience.
2, 1.
J.J. Green for CNN, Culpeper, Virginia.
And that's world news for now. I'm Cynthia Bowers. I'll be right back with a look at the hour's headlines.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Wednesday's second meeting of a U.S. space shuttle and the Russian space station Mir was every bit as spectacular. Astronauts aboard Atlantis caught their first glimpse of a twinkling Mir 165 miles away.
We've been looking at it with the binoculars, and actually we're quite impressed that we can still actually see the flashing lights.
Commander Ken Cameron became the star of the moment, shooting a flawless approach to the Russian space station.
Contact, capture.
Capture confirmed.
Atlantis carried a 15-foot docking tunnel which will remain attached to Mir, providing better clearance for future shuttle dockings. 5 more are planned. The U.S. spacefarers carried carnations, chocolates, and mail from home for the 3-man crew of Mir, now midway through a 6-month mission. Atlantis also ferried water and some new solar panels for the chronically underpowered space station. It was another golden moment for NASA and the Russian Space Agency as they head toward joint construction of a new international space station.
You guys make the incredible look very, very easy. It was wonderful to watch.
The next shuttle Mir docking is scheduled for March. During that mission, Atlantis will drop off U.S. astronaut Shannon Lucid to Mir for a 5-month stay, and 2 other astronauts will become the first Americans to take a walk in space outside the Russian station. Finding ways for humans to live on other planets was one of the goals of the Biosphere 2 when it first opened 4 years ago. But now it appears the 3-acre sealed world outside Tucson, Arizona, will be geared more for college students trying to find insights into the workings of our environment. This past week, Columbia University announced it had signed a 5-year contract to manage Biosphere 2. Students can spend a semester studying at and in the biosphere, which includes a rainforest, ocean with coral reefs, and farmland. Living quarters for the original residents of the closed world will be converted into classrooms. The project drew fire when it fell short of its stated goal of supporting 7 humans for 2 years without any supplies from the outside. Well, we hope that
Eastern United States, mainly in the clear, go west to the Great Lakes and all the way on up into the western provinces of Canada. Some snow possible. Down into Mexico, across the western Gulf of Mexico coast, rain showers throughout the day.
Ken, we'd like to hold off starting the APUs until after we get on the other side of the Tetris. So right now what we'd like to do is proceed with APU pre-start, step 2 there, and then hold off.
This is CNN International.
From CNN International, this is World News with Riz Khan from CNN Center in Atlanta.
Hello and welcome to World News. The Space Shuttle Atlantis is set to land shortly. You can see pictures of it live coming in now. We'll follow it down to the ground.
Altitude
also coming up,
6,400.
Serbian, Croatian and Bosnian delegates are in the final hours of peace talks. We'll have the latest in a live report. Celebrations in Poland signal a victory for former communist Aleksander Kwaśniewski in presidential elections. And in the US, government employees are back at work after the president ends a budget standoff with lawmakers. But the battle that sent them on furlough is not over. Well, first, the Atlantis astronauts are about to end their space journey. Fresh from an 8-day mission, the shuttle's about to touch down at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. You can see live pictures of the shuttle returning now from its 8-day flight with 5 astronauts on board. No doubt pleased with the way things went up in space. We'll listen in now as it comes in for the landing.
Main gear touchdown. Jim Halsell will deploy the drag chute. And nose gear touchdown. Atlantis is rolling out on runway 33 at the Kennedy Space Center, completing 129 orbits of the Earth and 3.4 million miles, the 5th straight landing of the orbiter at the Kennedy Space Center, and the 27th landing at the Kennedy Space Center in the shuttle program.
A smooth landing after a successful 8-day mission. The shuttle had linked up with the Russian space station Mir, delivering equipment and supplies to the cosmonauts up there. One of the key things of the mission was the attachment of a 5-meter docking tunnel, which will remain attached to Mir, allowing future link-ups with the shuttle to be much easier and safer. So a smooth landing after a smooth mission for the Space Shuttle Atlantis. 8 days in space, the 5 astronauts are back safe on the ground. You saw those pictures live on CNN International. Now
Etwas früher als berechnet, aber so präzise wie der 9-tägige Flug durchs All, klappte auch die Landung der US-Raumfähre in Cape Canaveral. Die Astronauten an Bord, 3 Amerikaner und ein Kanadier, haben den zweiten von insgesamt 7 Testflügen zur russischen Weltraumstation Mir durchgeführt. Amerikaner und Russen proben die Zusammenarbeit im All für ihr gemeinsames Zukunftsprojekt, den Bau der internationalen Raumstation Alpha. Atlantis soll dafür im März nächsten Jahres wieder abheben.
The U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis returned to Earth Wednesday, completing its final flight of 1995. The smooth landing also marked the end of a successful 8-day mission, during which the Atlantis docked with the Russian space station Mir. The 2 crews spent 3 days together, exchanging equipment and gifts. NASA calls the mission a confidence builder, as the United States works on preparations for an international space station. The station is to be built in cooperation with the space agencies of Russia, Canada, Europe, and Japan.
Andockmanöver an die russische Forschungsstation Mir ist die US-Raumfähre Atlantis zur Erde zurückgekehrt. Vor 2 Stunden landete sie sicher in Cape Canaveral. Der Flug diente zur Vorbereitung für den Bau einer internationalen Weltraumstation.
Cape Canaveral. Nach ihrem 3-tägigen Rendezvous mit der russischen Station Mir ist die US-Raumfähre Atlantis wieder zur Erde zurückgekehrt. Es war der 2. von geplanten 7 Besuchen bei den Russen im All. Die 5 Astronauten hatten einen neuen Andocktunnel, Wasser und Nahrungsmittel sowie wissenschaftlich-technische Geräte zur Raumstation transportiert. Für das kommende Jahr sind 3 weitere Flüge der Atlantis zum Mir vorgesehen.
Military spy satellites are taking on a new, more benign mission. While here on Earth, a giant radio telescope probes the heavens, listening for an answer to that old question, is anybody out there?
Future Watch, brought to you by IBM.
With roughly 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, many of which could be orbited by planets, it's hard to believe that the only intelligent life is here on Earth. So the search is on for evidence of galactic neighbors with the most ambitious communications project to date. Ann Kellen reports.
Is there life out there? Almost everyone has an opinion.
I think it would be really self-centered if we were just the only living creatures in the whole universe.
There's other life in the universe guaranteed.
I don't know. There's no data.
Science fiction stories such as War of the Worlds usually depict an invasion as Earth's first encounter with space aliens. Scientists say it's more likely Earthlings will hear the first extraterrestrials before seeing them, perhaps with the help of a new telescope that's now eavesdropping on the universe, said to be the largest known instrument of its type.
This is our latest and greatest attempt to build a large enough fishnet to catch this critter.
With its 84-foot dish, it's a radio telescope, a 300-fold improvement over the latest versions of a series that began tuning into outer space 35 years ago.
This experiment just to give it some numbers, is 1 trillion times more powerful than the first search done in 1960, looking for alien signals.
Project Beta, as it's called, is an 8.5 million channel receiver. From the Oak Ridge Observatory in the small town of Harvard, Massachusetts, this powerful receiver scans the sky, listening for signals from space. This new radio telescope generates a CD-ROM worth of data every 2 seconds, practically all of it of no use so far.
It takes us about half a year to cover the sky. We're looking better than we've ever looked before, but it's still not very much on the scale of what may well be needed.
One of the sponsors, the 100,000-member Planetary Society, hopes this powerful receiver will one day find a signal that confirms extraterrestrial intelligence.
There's other life in the universe guaranteed. Other life in our galaxy guaranteed. Advanced life elsewhere in the universe, I'll guarantee that one too. Other advanced life in our galaxy, extremely probable. Probable enough that you could bet your life on it. Here's the tough part. Having other advanced life in the galaxy doesn't mean necessarily that they're transmitting at a radio frequency at little old us with enough signal so that we can detect it with this apparatus.
We're relatively young compared to the universe, the age of the universe, and so that would mean that they're probably much more advanced.
We do not know if there's extraterrestrial life or not. We know that the argument is a very good one, that there's a possibility of it. We know that it seems to make sense based on what we're learning as we look at other star systems, as we learn about the origin of life on Earth. It makes sense, but we don't know.
If we could establish contact, it would be a bridge across 4 billion years of independent life start and evolution. It would be, in some very profound sense, the end of Earth's cultural isolation and a bridge into the galactic internet, if you like. It would be one hell of a discovery.
Even if the faintest signal never is heard, Professor Horowitz reminds us no search can ever prove extraterrestrial intelligence does not exist. Ann Kellen, CNN, Harvard, Massachusetts.
While we may never know if there's any alien life out there, we are being watched by eyes in the sky. Secret, high-tech spy satellites have been keeping tabs on the Earth for years, but now these military satellites are taking on an additional duty, finding environmental trouble spots. Sharon Collins has details.
Government space and weather scientists have long used satellites to monitor rainforest loss, oil spills, and other large-scale environmental conditions. But now super-secret spy satellites are getting into the act. Government intelligence agencies have agreed to use their eyes in the sky to monitor trends in climate and nature.
The real point here is to try to have dual use of these big, expensive assets. We spend several $billion a year on putting these satellites up and flying the satellites, and isn't there a way that we could somehow use this to an additional purpose?
James Baker is a member of Medea, a group of scientists ferreting out environmental trends using CIA and military data. He says recently declassified spy photos have helped uncover problems like pollution of Lake Baikal in Russia and water loss in the Aral Sea. But the new initiative marks the first time the environment will be an active part of intelligence satellite missions.
Well, I can't really talk about the technical details of what the satellites can do, but let me say they can do more. They can see further. They can give you a higher resolution than you can get with the satellites that we operate under civil control.
Exact environmental targets haven't been decided, but candidates include the Galapagos Islands, the rainforests of Costa Rica, and the Mojave Desert in California. Some say this environmental initiative is partly to justify the existence of high-tech spy equipment in the post-Cold War era. The findings could also help maintain national and global security.
One of the things that leads to conflict is changing natural resources, drought, problems with farming, general fights over water resources. The more you know about the environmental resources, the more chance you have to have some warning about whether there might be national conflict.
The information gathered won't be released to the public right away to avoid revealing the satellite's spying capabilities. But scientists say since the point is to determine long-term trends, not current problems, that won't be a hindrance. Sharon Collins, CNN reporting.
We are now in
the final 5½ hours of the countdown for the launch of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on the second mission to dock with the Russian Mir space station. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours in holding, where we are now in the suited room, and we see our commander, Ken Cameron. Going across the room, and our pilot, Jim Halsell, undergoing their final suit up and check out of their helmet, pressurization checks. Mission Specialist Chris Hatfield, who will be operating the remote manipulator arm during this flight. Going across the room, again, we see Bill MacArthur finishing his suit-up activities. And this should be Jerry Ross, indeed. These launch and entry suits are not very comfortable, but they're certainly functional, very visible. Temperature now at the launch pad at 58 degrees. Picking up the count now at 3, 2, 1, T-minus 3 hours and counting. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 2 hours, 54 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. And the STS-74 astronauts now are leaving the suit-up room, headed for the elevator, going from the 3rd floor of the operations and checkout building down to the awaiting astronaut transfer van.
And MNT launch director. Jim, the MNT is working, no issues, you're cleared to launch. Copy that. And Atlantis, looks like we got everything lined up, ready for you guys to go, so have a good mission, and we'll see you back here in about 8 days. Roger that. Thanks very much, sir. We sure appreciate the help. And NTD launch director, you have a clearance to launch. NTD copies. Thank you.
Orbiter's flight controls have been tested. And standing by now to gimbal the main engines. We see the speed brake being cycled here. And now the main engines are gimbling, or being moved through their operational latitudes. T-minus 3 minutes.
Yeah, let's just go for ET LO2 pressurization.
Liquid oxygen tank now being pressurized. Weather Officer Ed Priscillic just has passed the word that they are now officially green at the pad.
Memory and verify no unexpected errors. Inlet.
And the gaseous oxygen vent hood, notice the Gox beanie cap now being retracted.
Copy.
Ground launch sequencer will make a check at T-minus 37 seconds to make sure that it's in the fully retracted position.
Flight crew OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow. And looks like the second time was a charm. Have a good flight. Roger that, thank you. And that's complete. CLS, let's go for ET LH2 pressurization.
And that was orbiter test conductor Mike Key from Lockheed Martin wishing the crew a good flight.
20.
Sound suppression water system activated.
15.
10, 9, 8, 7, go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with the Russian docking module, the threshold to world cooperation in space.
Roll program.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Atlantis, go at throttle up.
Roger, go at throttle up.
Atlantis 3 main engines are now back at full throttle. Atlantis altitude 12 miles, 9 miles downrange from the launch pad. Atlantis is now traveling 2,400 miles per hour. 1 minute 40 seconds since launch, Atlantis has already burned more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant and weighs less than half of what it did at liftoff. Flight controllers are now standing by for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rocket booster first stage. Booster officer confirms a good separation of the twin solid rockets.
And MNT launch director. Jim, the MNT is working, no issues, you're cleared to launch. Copy that. And Atlantis, looks like we got everything lined up, ready for you guys to go, so have a good mission, and we'll see you back here in about 8 days. Roger that. Thanks very much, sir. We sure appreciate the help. And NTD launch director, you have a clearance to launch. NTD copies, thank you. And launch team, we're going to pick up the count here in approximately 1 minute, 15 seconds. 25. 20. 15. 10. TLS, let's go for main engine start.
All vents open. Copy vents.
T0, FRB ignition.
Liftoff confirmed.
Copy liftoff.
Roll program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Atlantis for tips.
Go ahead, Story.
We sent one last test message, if you could check that out for us.
Okay, I'm looking at the most recent one. Its grayscale is much lighter.
Not down Lincoln, just recording locally. Okay. Bill filled most of the field of view right now, but that will change.
Okay, I'm done.
And recording there, or is it going up to the... Just on TV. Okay. Chris, we're dining in the line of the TV. Oh, okay. Is it recording? Yes, sir.
And switch hands, please, on the mic. Thank you.
Okay, loud and clear. How do you hear me, Doug? This is KB5 AWP on the Space Shuttle Atlantis for Golf Sugar, G0 Sugar Yankee X-ray. Go ahead.
0 Sugar Yankee X-ray calling. Can you tell me?
Living and working in Russia, so it's all worked out to be a very interesting turn of events.
Yeah, I can imagine, Ken. We followed it quite a bit. I know you've been in Russia for quite a while, and very excited to make the trip to Mir. I wish I was up there with you, buddy.
Well, I understand. So how's things going with you in England? I haven't seen you probably since about that time in Fort Worth.
Yeah, okay, Ken, it's going really well. I'm actually coming back upstairs in about a month.
No. Okay, Story, you were stepped on. Say again, please. Okay, you've certainly been a big help to us, and we've really enjoyed working with you, and we look forward to it throughout the rest of the mission. Thanks, and get a good night's sleep.
Surprisingly enough, the body doesn't rest dead straight. When I completely relax, this is the position my body goes into. Arms bent, knees bent. So when you're sleeping, this is the position your body wants to go into. It's where all the muscles are relaxed.
Like somebody moved the other flight data file out again. He did. I gave it. I don't know what Ken put it.
He put it in here.
In where? Okay. Thank you. I'll put it in there too.
These are honest plays, right? Why did that not plug? So what have we got? Our long field of view is 58.9.
Well, we will find it.
Oh, that's true.
101 to 103. And ODS centerline is payload 2.
Yep.
You. Reload.
Spock shows 8.0.
Thank you. Right.
I can't be more. starting a payload-based survey.
All right, I'll be out as soon as we start.
No rush. This is my tone.
Help us confirm we know where the KU to tips problem is. Could you check one more message we sent up? This one should have the same problem as the first test message.
I'll go check.
Yes, it sure does.
Yep, no more.
Okay, we're getting Bill up here so he can listen up. We're doing SM checkpoint initiates and air log resets.
Copy all, Jerry. And heads up, the message 16, the OSVS troubleshooting should be on board. It's about a 10-minute procedure, and you can perform it, or any of you can perform it at your discretion when you get a moment.
Atlantis, Houston, good morning. Time to wake up and do the right stuff today with that docking module. We'll have you back at 1409 on the ZOE.
Houston, thank you very much for that inspirational music. We're ready to answer the call, and you timed it perfectly. We were just coming into a beautiful sunrise.
to the tracking. We are. Let's go. We're running.
Whoa, is that a rock solid track? Holy cow.
Just for grades.
Look at that.
Yeah, pretty high. Our solution check.
Look how solid. Yeah. Just because it's not so close and it has a nice out of angle thing.
Shadow.
Oh, beautifully lit right now. I mean, we have direct sunlight on 4 out of the 4, 3 out of the 4. Okay, refining the aim?
Yes, sir.
There'll be time.
Okay, Houston, we have OSVS data and we're about to start the McLean maneuver.
Copy, Lance.
We shouldn't celebrate too long. I think the lighting's going to cause us problems with targets 2 and 4 here shortly.
We concur, sir. We'd like you to press on with DM installation.
That's at work. Houston, we have capture.
That's verified.
All right. Done that, Chris? Say that.
Okay. Must be the Caspian coming up.
And before we lose you, we are also ready for RMS ungrapple.
Okay, and do we have a go on all those activities during the LOS, or do you want to wait on the other side?
You can press on. Atlantis for the aft station.
Go ahead.
Panel A7L, heaters / DCU power 3 to on, please.
Houston, we have the docking module camera on downlink. You could take it whenever you want to.
Hello, Chris. We have a good image up in the docking module. Looks like a fun place to enjoy yourself in zero gravity.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be empty for long, Dave, but it's a nice bit of space right now.
We've been looking at it with the binoculars, and actually we're quite impressed that we can still actually see the flashing lights, considering that most of that light has to be bounced from the sun. Those are pretty impressive flashers.
In our TV picture, we can still see the oscillation as well. That is impressive.
I'll give it another pulse.
Okay, good.
This thing off.
Still show a little bit outside. We got a long time.
0.05.
I'm gonna pulse once.
At 185.
Beat pulse.
Okay, I'll get you a new rate. Well, you can feel the whole vehicle.
That was a good one. See what that when it computes that out. Yeah, that nudges us just up in there.
Sounds like auto bracketing going on over there.
Sure. Now?
Mark.
177 feet stopped.
Okay. All right.
Good
176. Stop. Okay.
Beautiful work, Ken.
Thank you guys. This is just pushing the button. You guys really keep this thing going.
We'll have about 10 minutes of TV time when we get to East.
Houston, Atlantis, Pale Gale, I'm happy we have TCS-1 and 2 locked up. Correction, locked on the target.
Okay, we'll tell her.
For a minute.
Okay, minus 0.03. Would that be blue leisure?
It's hard to believe. If you wiggle it around, you'll get... No, we're closing that fast. In fact, we're opening.
Okay.
You gotta push it against the window and hold it rock steady. Hey, you can see stars.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I'd like to try it too, also, Chris.
Go for it.
How we doing?
Beautiful.
Good. I need to give you a closing pulse, I think.
We got clearance to go, what do we get clearance for?
For approach on time. Final approach on time.
Okay.
Here you go, Ken.
Okay.
You might need a closing pulse pretty soon. We're like at 177 and opening. I'm going to give you an 8
do
pulse
that.
right now.
You might do 1 to null and 1 to close.
Okay.
The Mir space station is now in its equivalent of free drift, meaning the station is inhibited from having any movements during the final phases of the rendezvous and docking. Atlantis is now at 40 feet from the space station. Slowing the approach to station keep at a distance of about 30 feet. before Commander Ken Cameron will initiate the final approach and docking.
Atlantis, как принимаете мир?
35 feet now below the space station. Commander Ken Cameron will be slowing the descent, or the initial response or rendezvous with the station.
TCS is locked track. Closure looks pretty good, Ken.
40 seconds.
Shows 2 feet.
5 seconds.
Okay, we have overlap.
The rate.
We are
0.06.
8 inches. 0.1 or 0.06?
0.06.
4 inches. Now. We have capture.
0.13. 0.13 was on.
Damping is on.
Так, ребята, вы готовы?
Less than 2 minutes from docking. Atlantis is now 8 feet from the space station, closing at a rate of 0.07 feet per second.
Есть рабочий режим. ВС-1. Режим СЭП.
Сейчас 0,09 футов в секунду. Дальность 7,5 футов.
То бишь 2 метра примерно.
Да.
Понятно.
Five feet from docking. Four feet in less than 1 minute from docking.
Фута, ребят.
Есть касание, есть индикаторный режим, есть сцепка.
Contact, capture.
Capture confirmed.
Есть захват.
Давление еще контролируем какое-то время.
Конечно, конечно.
Capture is confirmed. Atlantis is now docked with the Russian space station.
Понятно, да.
И переходим на контроль.
The next step is to bring the ring adapter down.
As you heard, mirrors free drift.
Okay, if this thing turns around such that the Earth is back behind us per camera C, let me know.
I show ring driving out.
Drive command is on. Base is moving out.
Okay.
I've lost my initial position.
I'm pushing power on.
Okay. Drive command is off.
Jerry, look at the tethers attached to their hand.
Look how close that thing is.
Sucker is right there.
Good Lord.
Did we really do this? Nice job.
Good job, man.
Hey,
well done, buddy. Well done.
Hey,
nice job. You guys.
Nice teamwork all the way around, guys.
Yeah.
Bill,
Good, buddy.
super job.
Good job, gentlemen. Good job.
Good job.
Chris. Good job.
Where are we at? Dapping off?
И ходим на контроль.
The next step is to bring the ring adapter down.
As you heard, mirrors free drift.
Roger, Houston.
Chris, the ZOE would be the perfect place.
Roger. Houston Atlantis, from near, we're ready to check the camcorder here if you want to go asynchronous mode. The story, I've already got it downlinked to you. I don't see a line in it. Does it look okay to you?
It's a great picture.
Very good. We're going to the mirror module.
about the harder task, trying to go backwards.
But it's fun.
Filming.
All right, once we get through the DM, I'll let you go play away. You're upside down again.
Yeah, but I'm on the bungee again. I have no idea what this does to me as far as getting out of here.
Okay. Let's take that thing out of the box.
Are you hearing Yuri from base pod?
Jim? Say again. Take that phone.
Okay, we're not hearing a response from Houston from Moscow.
This is a symbolic plaque of the International Space Station and of Mir and Shuttle. There is emblems of NASA, the Russian Space Agency, ESA, and Canada. Thank you very much, and thanks to the crew of the shuttle. This is a very beautiful and memorable gift that will absolutely remind us of our joint work and our training for this flight, and we will treasure it with great gratitude. An official documentation from NASA and the first phase.
Special plaques have flown already on Mir 18, STS-71. What написано экипаж?
It's written the crew of Mir 18, STS-71, Mir 20, and so on.
Houston, Mir Atlantis complex, we've come to the end of what I think has been the most successful mission I could have possibly imagined. We've worked together extremely well, had a great launch, rendezvous and docking, and the chance to see the station Mir, to fly around inside it, exchanging cargo, conducting experiments, and most of all, seeing and working with friends has been an experience that none of us will ever forget. Yuri, Sergei, and Thomas, it has been wonderful to see you again, to work with you and fly with you. The Russians, I think it's most difficult to say goodbye, and the Russians have a much better expression, which is "До свидания," until we see each other again. Even better, "До скорой встречи." So soon for a request for a meeting again soon. Yeah. And that is what is in all of our hearts, that we see you and meet again soon after the flight.
До свидания. До свидания. Всем до свидания. Счастливого возвращения на Землю. Спасибо. Но мы еще будем говорить в УКВМ. Да. В Хьюстоне большой привет всем специалистам, которые поддерживали полет, обеспечивали. Конечно. Watch my head, my... До свидания. До свидания, друзья мои. До свидания. Okay, let me get out of here. Крис, до свидания, Крис. До свидания.
Okay. Yeah, I will be pushing the undocking button. Jim, I'll be looking for someone to watch the hooks when I push it.
Got it. See about a minute 10 for that.
Correct? There we go. Okay. Clock's running. We have good physical separation. Looks beautiful. Okay, I call that 2 seconds. Inertial. Pedals free, executing opening right.
Somebody stop that time.
Visual. Shuttle Atlantis, Dallas, 90 футов.
Сейчас смотрю, там трактор 01 со светом 3076 выдаем.
The Russian interface officer is notifying the mission control in Kaliningrad that the orbiter is outside of 50 feet, meaning the Mir crew can go back to attitude control now on the space station. Current distance is 104 feet, opening at a rate of 0.37 or 0.3 of a foot per second.
Есть тоже.
Mir has now been commanded back to attitude control.
Okay, do you want that ergometer or do you want to keep looking at this for a little while?
We're going to change our minds and take this. It's irresistible.
We sort of thought you might say that.
Well, you know what my vote was going to be.
Atlantis is traveling 550 miles per hour, approaching the heading alignment circle, an imaginary circle around which Commander Ken Cameron will fly Atlantis and set up for the final approach. Commander Ken Cameron now flying Atlantis around the heading alignment circle.
Atlantis on at the 90, looking good.
Roger.
Pre-flare maneuver underway, positioning the orbiter for the landing. Pilot Jim Halsell deploying the landing gear. The gear is now down and locked. gear touchdown. Jim Halsell will deploy the drag chute. And nose gear touchdown. Atlantis is rolling out on runway 33 at the Kennedy Space Center, completing 129 orbits of the Earth and 3.4 million miles, the 5th straight landing of the orbiter at the Kennedy Space Center, and the 27th landing at the Kennedy Space Center in the shuttle program.
Houston.
Roger, Atlantis, we'll stop. Добро пожаловать обратно на Землю. И мы поздравляем вас с успешным окончанием полета. Great job.
Спасибо большое. Field in sight.
Copy, field in sight.
We'll stop, Houston.
Okay, post-landing Delta.
Roger, Atlantis, we'll stop. Добро пожаловать обратно на Землю. И мы поздравляем вас с успешным окончанием полета.
Inco.
Pointing
Great job.
inhibited uppers, no deltas.
Copy. Booster.
None.
Payloads.